to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for joining us today. Get ready to be inspired and motivated to live a high-impact life. Now, here's Rick.
Welcome to the Point of Impact podcast. I'm Rick McDaniel. It's great to have you joining us today as we start our wind down of season 6, but we're not done yet, and we've got a really great episode for you today. A little bit different. Going to talk about inspirational leadership. For years, leadership was a huge part of my life and something that I devoted a lot of time and effort to, and actually traveled, all over the world, Europe, Russia, South America, speaking on leadership. But then as I shifted my focus to inspirational and out of my main leadership role as a founder and senior pastor, I really began focusing on inspirational messages and writings and books. But I found a way to put it together, and I'm going to talk to you about that today. And I am really excited about this material because I think it can really help you in whatever leadership role you're in. And again, remember, just because you don't have a title doesn't mean you're not a leader. A high schooler can be a leader to fellow high schoolers or middle schoolers, and a young 20-something professional can be a leader, and moms in the home taking that super important role of leading the household during the day. That's a leadership role, not to mention all kinds of director and manager roles, as well as more senior level C-suite executive roles. And if you're a coach or a teacher, there's so many places for leadership to be exercised, especially inspirational leadership. So we will get into that in just a moment. A couple of things to share with you. One is that I have recently redone my LinkedIn page, and I talk a lot about, follow me on Instagram at Rick McDaniel _official, or Twitter X at Rick McDaniel, or Facebook Rick McDaniel, HIL, all caps, HIL, stands for High Impact Living. But I don't talk about my LinkedIn, and that has come to my attention, and I have put a lot of work and effort into redoing it into a much better profile page than it ever was before. Now it is really filled with information, very helpful, broken down. You can see exactly what I do. You can find out ways that you can contact us, whether it's my Greater team for businesses and corporate, or Greater Sunday for churches, or whether it's stuff about my books or all the other things that I'm involved in. It's a great way. Plus, you can learn about my background. If you don't know kind of my full story, you can hear about that as well. Maybe you picked up bits and pieces listening to this podcast, and you could just put it all together, and you could put it all together real quick. So it's just really easy, just boom, boom, boom. There it is. Contact information, links, the whole nine, as they say. So I would encourage you to begin to follow me on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn. I think you'll find it very helpful and informative, and especially if you're in the business world, not just if you're in the business world, but certainly if you are, you definitely want to be following. The content is very helpful. So be looking for that by going and following me on LinkedIn. Rick McDaniel on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's other Rick McDaniels, but you'll find me pretty quick, I think. So make sure and do that. All right, so today I want to talk to you about inspirational leadership. I mentioned last week a little bit about the background of this. So just real quick, I got asked to contribute a chapter in a new book called Maverick Leadership. And that book is now, it's not out for purchase, but it's out for pre-ordering, and you can lock in your book, and then almost always the books come earlier than this is be my 10th book that I'm in, and although 9 of them I read I wrote, I guess I was in another book too. Yeah, this library, this thing of sermons, contributed one to that. So I have to remember that because I keep saying this is my first one, but technically my second, but a little different than that book. So you have different people from the leadership field and the military field and business field and the church world coming together as contributors to this book, Maverick Leadership. And when they asked me, my initial response was, hey, I'm kind of not really doing the leadership thing that much anymore in terms of the speaking. I still certainly do consulting and coaching, absolutely. But the more I thought about it, and I just really feel like God just gave me this idea of merging together years of leadership, knowledge, and experience. I actually wrote a book on leadership years ago with the inspirational message, and put it all together and came up with something called Inspirational Leadership. And I am very excited to share that with you. I mean, really excited to share this. So I want to give you a taste of it today. And I would encourage you to go and pre-order Maverick Leadership so you can have it when it comes out. And then you'll get not only my chapter, but a lot of other great chapters from a lot of folks. And again, the idea of Maverick Leadership is the disruptive nature. You know, can you be a disruptor in the most positive sense, obviously, not in a negative, pejorative sense, but can you be a disruptor? And we need that kind of disruption to innovate, to bring in new ideas, new technologies, new approaches. And so it's vitally important. And I believe the inspirational leadership part, though there are people who practice it marvelously in the past, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, it's needed so much and so desperately. So can't wait to share that with you in book form, but I want to share some of the basic principles today with you. When I began to think about inspirational leadership, one person's name immediately came to mind, and that is Abraham Lincoln. I think he is, in many ways, the preeminent example of inspirational leadership. He was thrown into a defining moment in American history, and his inspirational leadership preserved the nation. It's just incredible to think what would have happened to America. America could have been portioned off into any number of separate entities, some retaining slavery, some not. The United States would no longer be a union. And without the United States of America, the 20th century would look completely different. Our world would be radically different and look nothing like it does today. I mean, that's just an absolute fact. And you can trace it all back to many sacrifices and many men and women. But at the top of that list is the leader of the whole thing, and that's Abraham Lincoln. He saved the most significant nation on earth, and arguably, and I don't think it's much of an argument really, greatest president in American history. Positively, the essence of inspirational leadership. And I think that inspirational leadership is desperately needed today, whether it's in government or business, nonprofits, teams. Inspirational leaders are the key to organizational success. Now, I've always subscribed to the general definition of leadership as influence. I learned that from John Maxwell 25 years ago. I think it remains true today. Leadership is influence. But for inspirational leadership, I want to make the definition a little more specific. It's the transfer of belief. Inspirational leaders create a positive culture of belief. They inspire those they lead to believe. And this belief leads to amazing accomplishments. They inspire their followers to do what many believe can't be done. Inspirational leaders are optimists, visionaries, dreamers. They invest their time and energy in creating a positive culture. That culture then excites, encourages, and energizes people. And the whole organization, group, team, whatever it is, gets better. Gets better. And you see this in the sports world. You see this in the business world. It's just a common theme of what happens when you see inspirational leadership in action. The leader has belief. He creates a positive culture where attitude and energy are contagious. The team believes they can win, they can succeed. He transfers that belief to his people, and the results speak for themselves. But it begins with the leader. The leader must believe. He, she must be optimistic and spread positivity. Disney CEO Bob Iger has said the most important characteristic of a leader is optimism. One of the most successful leaders, in fact, so successful that after he retired, they had to bring him back. As Disney went down, he had to bring him back so he could bring him back up again, and he's already doing it. The most important characteristic of a leader is optimism. What the leader believes is possible greatly influences what is accomplished. Inspirational leaders communicate faith in a world of pessimism, negativity, and fear. They choose faith over fear. They know overbelievers can become overachievers. The leader's belief inspires followers to believe. That's it. That's how it works. Now, there are, I believe, some key characteristics of an inspirational leader. And I'll share 4 with you today that I believe are indicative of someone who is an inspirational leader. The first is that they communicate motivationally. Now let's go to another great leader who saved his nation. Not quite the same way as Lincoln and not quite as big, but very big. Because when you're talking about England, the United Kingdom, you're talking about what was America before America. I mean, they were the greatest nation on earth before we became the greatest nation on earth. And they came perilously close in World War II for the whole thing to come crashing down. And it was his inspirational leadership during World War II that really provides an example of using communication, inspirational, motivational communication to lead. Faced with enormous adversity, he understood the need to inspire and unify his people. His speeches were masterfully motivational, filled with optimism and hope. He knew his words could galvanize the nation and boost and bolster collective morale. His ability to articulate a compelling vision rallied people to be resilient, endure hardship, and strive for victory. Churchill's communication involved listening and adapting messages to fit the situation, and this adaptability ensured his words resonated widely, bridging societal divides. He went even beyond his speeches in terms of not only public but private communication. Churchill's many letters and a few face-to-face meetings with the American President Roosevelt were pivotal in bringing America into the war. Without America, Britain would have surely been invaded by Germany. I mean, that's just, again, historical facts. Churchill had to communicate motivationally privately to convince President Roosevelt to get America in the war when we did not want to. And it's because we got in the war that Britain wasn't invaded and taken over. Churchill was a man of uncommon optimism and enthusiasm. Inspirational leaders can emulate Churchill by practicing clear, persuasive, public and private communication, crafting messages that inspire, leading people to guide their organizations through challenges. Effective communication is a timeless tool for inspiring and motivating followers. Inspirational leaders use communication to give their followers the precious gift of hope. And people need it. They need it desperately. John W. Gardner, who held many very prominent leadership positions and even wrote a book called On Leadership, he once said, "The function of a leader is to keep hope alive." The function of leaders is to keep hope alive. And the best way to keep hope alive is through motivational communication. The power to motivate resides solely in the leader's ability to communicate effectively. Using stories are a powerful motivational tool. Neuroscientists have found that we think in stories, we exchange information through stories, and we prefer stories over facts and figures. People love stories and connect to them. They work better than simply sharing facts or data. When there's a void in communication, negativity will fill it. So you have to, as an inspirational leader, craft a clear, contagious vision. Share through stories a picture of the future that excites and motivates people. Showing them what the future can look like when they can't see it. But as my mentor Bill Hybels famously said, vision leaks. So over-communicating is essential. I would often say to my staff that about the time you're sick of talking about it, it's just about the time people are listening to it. It's worth saying again. About the time you're sick of talking about it, it's just about the time people are listening to it. So repetition may be boring to you, but it's a necessity to keep casting the vision, keep using your inspirational, motivational words time and time again to communicate to people. They need to hear it. And they need to hear it personally as well. This is how you build relationships and foster trust. Relationships built on trust are your strongest asset, and they cultivate deep connections. It's how it works. All right, got to keep going. I could talk a lot more. Second, inspirational leaders neutralize negativity. Inspirational leaders help their followers forfeit what they need most to lose: pessimism, cynicism, and negativity, and gain what can transform their lives: a positive, optimistic mindset. Now, this can be a challenge. National Science Foundation says the average person has between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day, and of those, 80% are negative, and 95% are repetitive thoughts. So in other words, 4 out of 5 thoughts are negative, and almost all of these thoughts are repeated time and time again. So people have way more negative thoughts than they do positive thoughts. Behavioral therapists have a term for this. They call them ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. Now, listen, not all negative thoughts are bad. We need to be aware of negative realities. Being alert helps us survive, but most negative thoughts are useless. They create anxiety, worry, fear. So when there are problems, inspirational leaders address them, but they offer solutions and they show a way forward. It's simply hard to grow, make progress, or be successful around people who are negative. Optimists simply fare better than pessimists. People who see the positive and have a positive outlook are happier and more successful than negative people. Inspirational leaders change the thinking in their organization. They replace the negative with positive, pessimism with optimism, doubt with faith. One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is to ignore negativity. They don't deal with complaining, energy drainers, selfishness, jealousy. You have to address these issues that are hurting your organization and performance. Needs to be confronted in a positive way to be more positive than the negative you face. And the goal is certainly to transform the negative person. But when individuals are acting this way, they're going to require confrontation and clear directives on what a positive change will look like. You keep casting the vision for a winning culture where everyone's a positive contributor to it. You share how teams that stay connected and committed can overcome challenges. You show how excitement about team success is greater than individual accomplishment. But it will be a challenge because one of the big things is complaining, and it spreads, it's contagious, and it's very destructive. And It's easy for people to do. So the goal has got to be to get your followers off the complaint train and get them to practice what I call complaint restraint. Complaining is the language of the disempowered. Help them to focus on the good, identify solutions and not problems. Have gratitude for all their blessings. And if you cannot succeed in doing this, then there's really only one option. You have to let them go, remove them from the team, ask them to stop volunteering. Inspirational leaders know maintaining a positive winning culture is their responsibility. And you've got to be willing to do it. All right, third characteristic of inspirational leaders, they overcome failure. I had a front row seat a few years back to watching the University of Virginia basketball team become the first number 1 seed in the history of the NCAA tournament, lose to a number 16 seed. I mean, it's as bad as it gets. But Coach Tony Bennett had a plan. You know, he took full responsibility, said that they got their butts kicked. But even at that moment, he was already planting the seeds, because he quoted Psalm 30, verse 5, that says, "Weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning." And his strong Christian faith grounded him in the reality that we all face tests and trials and tribulations, but we can overcome. And guess what? They did. They absolutely did. It was an unbelievable comeback story. Bennett had his team watch a TEDx talk by Donald Davis, a retired Methodist minister. And he told the story of severely slicing his leg with an axe at 5 years old and losing his kneecap. And the message was, you don't get past it by hiding from it. You only get past it by labeling it and going straight at it and crawling out from under it until eventually you sit on top of it. And that's what UVA did. They didn't ignore the University of Maryland, Baltimore County loss. They didn't make it the focus, but they framed it. They chose to handle it in the right way. And they emerged from under the boulder of defeat. And they did emerge from it because the very next year, they won, for the first time in the history of the school, the national championship in basketball. This is the school that had 3-time Player of the Year Ralph Sampson, and they couldn't win a national championship. And a year after the worst historic defeat ever, they won it all. So inspirational leaders understand setbacks and comebacks. And I certainly do too, since I've written 2 books about it. They know to have a comeback, you've got to give up excuses and face reality. Failing is a part of life. But there's a difference between failing and being a failure. You can't eliminate failing, but you only become a failure when you give up, when you become negative. And inspirational leaders help their followers understand how to deal with inevitable failures. They create a fail-friendly environment where innovation and disruption can lead to breakthroughs, but it also may lead to failures. So they show how to fail forward, to learn from their mistakes and improve, to fail their way to success by staying positive and optimistic. Inspirational leaders stay positive, even through failure. They're aware of the good thing about failure, which is that failing increases our desire to succeed. Failure is a great motivator because we don't want to experience it again. We don't want the feeling. We don't want the bitter taste in our mouth. Because winning is very sweet, and the sweetness is what we're after. And sometimes we must taste the bitterness to get to the sweetness. All right, one more. Inspirational leaders show appreciation. One of the great examples of this in leadership is the former President George H.W. Bush. He had a remarkable career. Just listen to this: ambassador to the UN, director of the CIA, vice president, and then the 41st president of the United States. That's pretty impressive. Well known for his notes of appreciation. They were characterized by genuine encouragement, highlighting outstanding actions or performance. He was like a teacher or a coach who saw something in people they could barely see themselves. His notes inspired because they acknowledged and encouraged the best version of a person's potential. Condoleezza Rice, who would end up ascending to great leadership positions herself, including Secretary of State, at the time was an advisor to Bush on Soviet and Eastern European affairs. She once said this: "Even I frequently received a thank you note from the president for a job well done, and this kindness and courtesy made it a joy to work with him." Sometimes he typed them, sometimes he wrote them. Finally got into the social media world toward the end there. He wrote so many that there's actually a book called All the Best George Bush, which serves as his memoir. And it's filled with all of these thank yous. Bush's inspirational leadership was at the root of thousands of thank yous. Inspirational leaders appreciate their followers, and they find various ways to express it. They know how meaningful it is when the leader acknowledges hard work, sacrifice, and effort. A leader who shows he cares inspires people to wholeheartedly commit to the vision. Followers simply work harder when they feel appreciated. Gratitude is a habit we develop. It's not a spontaneous emotion. Gratitude is appreciating, focusing on, being thankful for what we receive. Emphasize gratitude for people more than just actions. We need to make sure they know that we appreciate them. Inspirational leaders create this culture of appreciation, and they do it in a variety of ways. They certainly lead by example. I always had a stack of thank you cards in my desk so I could write a note whenever I thought of someone who needed one, who deserved one. And I encourage my staff to do the same. Inspirational leaders openly and regularly show recognition and gratitude in written or verbal forms. They foster this culture. And when you regularly do this, celebrate, acknowledge wins, it motivates, encourages people, shows their work matters. There's lots of ways you can do it, and I certainly talk more about it in the chapter in the book. Dr. Martin Seligman, he's the father of the positive psychology movement, did a study. 411 people performed a variety of tasks to boost happiness levels. In one task, they were asked to write thank you letters to people from their past and then hand deliver them. The folks who completed this task continued to have a happier attitude an entire month later. There's the research. How about this? Another piece of research. Dr. Robert Emmons, University of California, Davis, found that people who say thank you and express gratitude get a pervasive and long-lasting mood boost. His research revealed that regular grateful thinking can increase happiness by as much as 25%. So in other words, showing appreciation as an inspirational leader not only inspires your followers, it makes you happier as well. Pessimists don't change the world. There's never been a monument to a critic. Throughout history, it's the inspirational leaders, the optimists, the believers who make the greatest impact. Inspirational leaders believe in people and believe the best is yet to come. Because they believe in a better and brighter future, they work hard and inspire people to create it. They're positively contagious, sharing encouragement, optimism, and joy. They have an inspiring vision and create a positive culture. Bottom line, inspirational leaders succeed. They measure meaning as well as metrics. When purpose truly connects, the results are unmistakable. Stories replace complaints, culture changes naturally, and the vision becomes a reality. You want to be an inspirational leader in whatever role you play, big or small. Practice these qualities and characteristics, and you will inspire people. We need it. We need it, friends. We need more inspirational leaders. Be one of them. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode.